And I'm thinking it's still playing. Welcome,
Okay.
everybody. If you can see me and hear me, I'm Casey Sanders with Arkansas PBS. And we've got a great group of folks here with us tonight that I would love to introduce to you. And beginning with, as soon as we start our panel discussion, I will be handing this over to Clarice and Kwame Abdul-Bey. They're one of our partners tonight. They're with the Arkansas Peace and Justice Memorial Movement. I just had a little noise behind me. And they will be doing the moderation tonight for us. And I am going to just really quickly go through, because you're going to learn about the panelists from Clarice and Kwame's discussion. We have Walter Beach III. Walter Beach, former NFL player and very distinguished gentleman, and actually very, very well suited for tonight. He was one of the group of students, the Black students, that stood up for Muhammad Ali publicly back when he was resisting the Vietnam War and becoming a conscientious objector. So we're going to get some very deep history from Walter tonight. Then we also have Jonathan Ike, and Jonathan wrote Ali, A Life. And that book, along with a couple of other writings, is really what Ken Burns and Sarah Burns and her husband really built a narrative for the Ali documentary from Jonathan's book. It's an in-depth book, and if you were following the chat a little bit ago, you know that we're offering that book to you guys that you're participating here tonight. If you fill out the little form, and that was in the chat. So if you need to find it, look in there, and we'd love to send you a prize pack. It's a book and a t-shirt. And Jonathan, we're just really pleased to have you here tonight. You've done a lot of speaking engagements around the Muhammad Ali documentary, as well as Muhammad Ali, and talking about your book. So thank you for being with us. We also have Christopher Robinson, and he is the athletic director with UA-PB. And obviously a very important part of the discussion, because the title of our event tonight is Ali in Arkansas, but athlete to leader. And if anybody works with young people like coaches do, they know the importance of talking to our young athletes about being a leader, because they are leaders on campus. And so we're looking forward to speaking with him. And we've got Leon Jones. Leon is the student government president for UA-PB. He is a senior. And obviously, we're very happy to have an intergenerational conversation going tonight. And we'll be bringing them in. Also, we have Kamara Seals. So she's very important to us and this project, because she is the president of the UA-PB Alumni Association. And she has been talking to the alumni. Obviously, the history of Muhammad Ali in Arkansas is that he came to the state many times and had a special relationship with UA-PB, although he did visit other campuses. He was the Grand Marshal in 1990 for UA-PB's homecoming and part of the homecoming festivities. And so there are a lot of alumni that remember Muhammad Ali being on campus, speaking to students, being part of their homecoming. And we were really happy to partner with her to help bring those folks into the conversation. A few other folks that we see on here, we've got Kara Brown. Kara's been my partner, and she has been helping me pull this event together. And we just couldn't have done it without her. She's the Dean of Student Affairs and Activities, and has helped us bring students in, as well as campus and community. So we've really enjoyed working with you, Kara. And then Albert Brewer, we can't see you right now, but that's Coach Brewer, and he has got a group of young people. He runs Gloves, Not Guns, and that is a student boxing club here in Pine Bluff, and it's a wonderful nonprofit. obviously helps teach boxing skills and athletic skills, but it teaches leadership skills and life skills too. And so Coach Brewer has got a group of students behind him. Maybe it's a little loud over there, but we hope that he'll turn his camera on and his microphone on during our discussion and bring the kids in. So his group, I don't know what exactly he's got tonight, but his group is 8 to 16-year-olds. And I think that's who we've got. I hope I haven't missed anybody. And with that, I will say thank you all for being here on behalf of University of Arkansas Pine Bluff, the Arkansas Peace and Justice Memorial Movement, and Arkansas PBS, and much thanks to WIDA, who has helped us fund this event. So Kwame and Clarice, I can pass the baton.
Thank you, Casey. We appreciate being a part of this event. Yes. And we thank also UAPB for being a part of this event as well. As she stated, Muhammad Ali made several visits to the state of Arkansas, and during our discussion, we will bring that up and everything. But what's more important is we talk about how the influence of this giant of humanity influenced the students over at the campus of UA-Pine Bluff and the young people throughout the city of Pine Bluff. But with that, I would like to start by going right to Jonathan Hyde. Jonathan Hyde wrote what is believed to be the definitive book on the life of Muhammad Ali. In doing the research for this, I learned that several of the books that have been written about him were like segmented, but you wrote a complete history. Can you speak on that?
Yeah, thank you, Kwame. I'd love to. You know, I was born in '64. I can remember when Ali was fighting in the '70s, but 50 years later, looking back on it, it occurs to me that he's one of the most important figures in American history, right? This is no longer just an athlete. He's the kind of figure who deserves the big, fat presidential style biography where you look at his life and what it meant and how it shaped this country, how he was shaped by America growing up in the age of Jim Crow, and how he shaped America, helping to end the age of Jim Crow, and where that stands today, what it means today in the age of George Floyd. You know, how does Ali fit into this big national fabric, the entire sweep from slavery through civil rights to today? And he's the kind of figure who can help us better understand American history. So I felt like it was time, and you have to have a little time. You have to have 50 years to process at least, you know, what he meant to this country when he stood up against the Vietnam War, when he became a member of the Nation of Islam, when he said that you know, he wasn't going to work for integration, that he was going to work for Black independence. You know, we can put all that in the proper perspective now. And that's what I set out to do with this book. And I think that's part of what, you know, what Ken Burns did so well in this film as well, is to really look at Ali's place in America, how he shaped this country.
Yeah. Now, one thing that I want to do before we really get into it, I just want to let everyone know that this panel is wide open. It's not going to be a we ask you questions, you answer them. Panelists can talk to each other, they can question each other, they can answer each other, and let's just have like a barbershop discussion.
We will ask you questions though. They will be direct questions, but we do want you to engage with one another if you'd like to do that. Mm-hmm. I want to ask you, Jonathan, about, it seems like you had a lot of Ali's family speak in I know Ken Burns did in this. Layla Ali, what was, because she's an athlete, she kind of followed in her father's footsteps. She's the youngest, I believe. And what was the, were you able to interview her at all for the book?
No, I did not interview Layla. I interviewed all three of Ali's wives who were still living. His first wife passed away. I interviewed many of the children, and I really wanted to make sure that the women in this story got their voices heard, because so often in biographies, and certainly in years past, different era, the women who supported these men, who made their achievements possible, did not get their voices heard. And Ali was married 4 times to 4 very strong, powerful, smart women. And I was honored to be able to gain the trust of those women and to tell their stories. Some of the children I spoke to as well, but for the children, it was tough because Ali wasn't around much during their childhoods. He became a much better father to them in later years after his boxing career was over. But I wanted to make sure that people understood that he wasn't perfect, that he had difficult marriages, wasn't around for his kids as much as he wanted to be. And that's part, I think it's really important that we don't try to make our heroes out to be saints, that they can still be heroes, and we can all be flawed and still try to change the world. You don't have to be perfect to accomplish great things.
Absolutely agree with that. Yes. Thank you so much for saying that.
Yes.
I think, we do that sometimes. We what is it called? Deify our heroes and people that we are
Hero-fy,
right.
deify.
People that we look up to and that have been that played a pivotal role in our communities. And so I appreciate you saying that we don't make them to be saints, that they're flawed, that they're human first. He was human first, a man, and then he was all these other things. And so, so thank you.
And with him being human, it's really good to talk to someone that actually knew him and was a human shoulder to shoulder with him.
Right.
So Walter, you knew Ali, you met Ali, you've spoken with him. Can you tell us a little bit about your relationship with Ali, particularly being a member of the Cleveland Summit? Talk to us about your relationship with Ali.
Well, my relationship with Ali was like the other individuals in that photo. And I'm not certain why I was selected when there are other luminaries in that picture. And I would say, first of all, Jim Brown, because Jim is the one that brought all the people together. And one of the interesting things during that particular time, Jim called Kareem, Bill Russell, Bobby Mitchell, Willie Davis, and athletes at that particular time. We didn't necessarily have the economic and financial resources, but we did sacrifice. We bought our own tickets, we made our own transportation available, and got to the summit. This is not much of a digression, but athletes today, you got to pay them to do something. So if you want them there, you're gonna have to pay their airfare, their hotel rooms, and all that. But we kind of responded differently in that time. It was a different time. But Ali, one of the things that come out of the picture and the discussion about Ali is that I often have people tell me, man, you play with the Cleveland Browns and you got a championship team. And Ali taught me this. This is one of the things I got out of the relationship. I said, football is what I did. That's not who I am. Boxing is what Ali did, but that wasn't who he was. So that was the most important thing for me to appreciate and understand. I have a lot of jokes or things that I could say about him, but the other thing about him, he was absolutely amazing and always full of fun. He could find anything going on and have you laughing about it. We were in Miami, and that's the time he was fighting Sonny Liston. And as he would work out and do his road workout, they say, champ, well, what's going on? What you doing? and he'd be jogging. He'd have to jog, 10 miles. And he said, I'm just going bear hunting. That's what he called
Sonny Liston.
Sonny Liston. He said he's a big old bear. And he said, I'm going bear hunting, But he would joke about everything.
Indeed, that's what. And it's interesting, we talk about the Arkansas connection. Sonny Liston was from Forest City, Arkansas.
Oh, I didn't know that.
So that's even another layered connection, because it was while he was training for the fight for Sonny Liston that he actually came to Arkansas the first time. And during that first time that he visited Arkansas, he actually came with Malcolm X.
And that was in 1963.
1963. And a lot of people don't even know that both he and Malcolm X were here in Little Rock together for 10 days during that time.
You got that picture downstairs.
And I mean, since we are talking about him visiting here in Little Rock, in his visit, and I think he was here from 63, he visited first time, and then 69 is when he did a tour of a church and colleges.
Yes.
UAPB being one of those colleges, which was then AM&N, the agricultural, mechanical, and I think it's Normal
College.
Normal
Yes.
College was the name at that time. And well, I don't know if it was
a whole conversation right there.
Right. That's a whole conversation. The first college he visited when he was here was UA Fayetteville. So he visited UA Fayetteville, and that was real controversial because during that time, there was so much going on racially, especially here in the state of Arkansas. And so you had folks in the legislature, you had prominent white leaders who were saying, they were protesting him even being here, calling him un-American and those things. The second place he visited, but he continued, and that did not sway him or keep him from coming and continuing his tour. The second university he went to was UALR, which was called Little Rock University at that time. And he spoke with the Black students on campus, which at that time they were having a protest for equity.
Yes,
and
Black history
and
classes.
and more Black history classes. So he was there for that and during that time, and he really supported the students on the campus of UALR, which was again Little Rock University. And then his third college was his third college was UAPB.
No,
So
I went to Philander Smith, then UAPB.
No.
Oh, okay.
No. No. He went to UAPB first. Okay. And then he went to Philander Smith, but he was at UAPB and he was on the campus again, encouraging students, working with them, promoting Black nationalism, Black pride, leadership, all of those things that he exuded as a person more than an athlete. And I wanted to ask Camara a question here. And I wanted to ask you, how did Ali's refusal to fight? Because Camara is an activist in our community and in UA and has been in Pine Bluff for a long time. She's one of the directors of the Arkansas Public Policy Panel. So you deal with policy, equity, right, all those good things. And I wanted to ask you, how did Ali's refusal to fight in the Vietnam War and the court cases that preceded reflect race relations in the U.S.?
Well, first of all, I obviously applaud his decisions. He was a man of courage, very courageous, and he said what he meant. And I think his refusal to be drafted spoke volumes of who he was and the principles, his values. Okay. And that is what I admired as I started to, many years ago, learn about the life of Muhammad Ali, who was born Cassius Clay. Um, was just that the confidence that he had, which is one of his core principal values of who he was. So I think it yeah, I just think it spoke volumes. There are so many lessons we can learn today at the university and in the city and in our lives from Muhammad Ali because of the stance he took. You know, he was very firm in his beliefs. He was willing to give up his career. He actually did give up his career when the first verdict came back, but they appealed. He appealed and he won by unanimous decision. But what's so important to understand is that he was willing to give up everything. He was the champ. and he was willing to give that up for the values that he stood for. So to me, that speaks volumes. That's why I'm such a big fan. One of the first paraphernalia, athletic paraphernalia I ever purchased, the first three was of Muhammad Ali. So a big inspiration to me in my life, and but it was because of his values and how firm he stood on them, and he spoke out. He never bit his tongue, you know. And I'm like that in my life and in my work and the activism and advocacy. You know, I just speak truth to power, and yeah. So I think it bodes very well for us to take lessons here for the type of man, the humanitarian that he was, yet being an athlete and a leader in the community.
Yes,
Thank you.
Kamara, you spoke about what he gave up. And
Yes.
a lot of times these days, we put a dollar value on things to kind of understand what it actually means. And when he was here in Little Rock in 1969, the Arkansas Gazette asked him how much money he was losing for the bouts that he had to cancel. And in 1969, he said that he had lost over $16 million. So
Wow.
that's given up a lot.
That's a lot. That's a sacrifice.
That's a sacrifice. So, Coach Robinson, when we look at this and we look at this example that this athlete gave in his leadership, how can that translate to the young people that you are working with in the athletic department at UAPB?
I think it translates and it goes back to leadership. But before I say that, I have to say this. I am Cassius Clay, the most beautiful boxer in boxing today. I just had to say that, you know. He was the man. He was the man. Now, and talking with Mr. Beach and what Ms. Seals mentioned was what he gave up, he sacrificed. You know, if you want to be the best, you have to put in the time, put in the effort, put in the work to be able to compete with the best. Now, what Muhammad Ali mentioned, when he was not boxing, he was doing an interview and he talked about, you know, they took his title at that particular time. He said, they can't take my title because I didn't lose it in the ring. You know, they can say they've taken this and they've taken this away from me, but they can't. I've beat the best boxers in every country and even in the US. So they can't take my title. So what he had to do, he did a lot on the surface. And he said, I was auditioning. I did a lot of things in talking to try to get and climb that ladder. But you notice a lot of footage showed him working behind the scenes. As Mr. Beach mentioned, he went out and said, I'm chasing a bear. He psyched himself out to go work and put that work in to get on the highest level. And then not only get to the highest level, he challenged himself and said, I'm the greatest, before anybody else said it. So he had to believe it and work, put the work effort in to be able to get there and show that leadership. Because again, on his stature, he could have gone anywhere he wanted to, been served any way he wanted to be served. But he chose to take a path to help others. He loved people, and he sacrificed some of the benefits of his work ethic provided him to help others achieve as well.
Now, I know that you've mentioned some of that in this, Coach Robinson, but I want to ask specifically, and I also would like the other coach from Gloves, Not Guns, to answer this question as well, along with the youth, if they would like to. Coach Brewer, is how did Muhammad Ali help define the role of the athlete in social justice, the social justice movement, and or sports diplomacy?
Well, I think by the picture that Mr. Beach is in, it showed collaboration and people coming in together on a bigger stage. There are some things that take place even today. You see the Colin Kaepernick and what he's done. And I look at even what in my conference, we have Deion Sanders in our conference now, where he had the similar issue where when Muhammad Ali was addressed as Cassius Clay, he said, no, my name is Muhammad, and I want you to address me accordingly. And I think when Deion was addressed as Deion, he said, no, I'm Coach Prime. And it's very similar in that aspect to where, again, if I'm on this stage, I'm on this level, you address me that certain way as well. And when we're in positions as leaders and we take on that as athletes, I think leadership comes with that title. I worked in corporate settings to where we had this similar structure as coach, assistant coach, and instead of manager. So I think from that standpoint, on and off the field, the hierarchy, the structure, the protocols, I think that has a direct correlation to life as well. You get knocked down, you get up. You put yourself in situations to be the best. And that's this competitive work environment today as well.
Absolutely. Thank you, Coach Robinson. I think we lost Coach Brewer, but I'm gonna ask Walter Beach. Mr. Beach, can you also comment on that question, and I can read it again, about how Ali's role as an athlete in its social justice movement and its sports diplomacy,
Okay, I appreciate the question, and I don't want to get too intellectual or pandemic about it, but the circle of action of every word creates that which it affirms. So therefore, what I'm saying, Ali didn't give up anything. He wasn't threatened to give up anything. Ali, and this is one of the things that I got out of our meeting, is that Ali knew what was right. And when you introduce that transactional aspect of some money didn't mean nothing to him. So what? I'm not giving up any money if I don't box. And why? Because that which I value is the essence of my humanity.
Yeah.
And if I value the essence of our humanity, you're not threatening me by taking away some money. So, and all I'm doing is trying to say, that's what I got out of my relationship with Ali. And that's what I've always felt firm about. I am who I am. That other stuff that y'all talking about ain't got nothing to do with me. That's the way I always viewed Ali, and like I said, he was a jokester and a clown a lot. And when you were in his presence, you just had to appreciate that, because he expressed himself. You couldn't get too close to him without him throwing a punch at you. Or at least, faking to throw a punch at you. That was his nature. So that's I didn't want to go too far afield on people thinking that when you take these positions, you sacrificing and giving up something. Basically, what you're doing, you're saying, this is who I am. And that's what Ali said all the way through his life. And when he was saying, this is who he said, when he was saying, this is who I am, people who deal with control and power don't want that posture out there in the society.
Mm.
Kaepernick the same way. They don't want you to think that you can kneel if you want to kneel. You have to do what I want you to do when I want you to do it.
Mm.
And
Yes.
all Ali was expressing said, no, and you still can be a successful human being in the eyes of the one most high, the creator.
Yes.
And one thing that I heard him say during the 8 hours of watching the complete documentary, docu-series was, I can still be myself.
Mhm.
And that resonated with me.
Mhm.
He says, no matter what, I can still be myself.
Yes. And I wanted to ask the same question of Leon. Leon, do you need me to repeat the question? Because I can, but how does that, how did Muhammad Ali's help, Ali help define the role of the athlete in social justice and the movement, the social justice movement and sports diplomacy?
Yeah, that's a great question. I kind of want to tackle my answer from a different angle. I'm not an athlete, so I don't necessarily want to speak from the perspective of an athlete, but I can speak from the perspective of a leader. One thing that I really liked about the documentary was the point that was made about Ali really allowed himself and gave himself permission to be free. And so what did that look like? That really looked like him being equally American and Muslim. And I think that sometimes as a leader, like we don't necessarily allow our identities to come into play and allow our identities that we have to express our leadership. And we don't allow our identities to allow others to be inspired to act as well. And so if there's really one thing that I got from this is, let myself be free, right? And allow every identity that I have to truly inspire others to act. And I think that that's how Ali was able to not only be the greatest of all time, in sports, but really be the greatest of all time when it comes to activism, when it comes to, his work that he did. I mean, he was an amazing wordsmith. So, in everything that he did, he gave himself permission to be free. And so that's one thing I think as a leader, we can do. And then the next thing that was said in the documentary was like, everything he did couldn't be undone. And I think that him really like recognizing his identities, like goes into, everything that he did left impact and it left legacy. And whenever you're going into the field of activism or advocacy, I mean, that's the name of the game, legacy, not for yourself, but if you're going to truly change the culture and change society, like legacy is how you do that, and leaving an impression on people that makes them want to change their thoughts and actions as well, to leave the spaces that they occupy a better place.
Thank you.
Yeah,
I
that's
appreciate
awesome.
that.
Thank
And
you.
we
Yes.
have a couple of questions in the chat that we're
Wonderful.
going to get to. But before we get to those questions, and for those of you that have questions, please put them in the chat and we will definitely get to them. Jonathan, Leon talked about Ali's wordsmithism. And one thing that I got from your research in his life that really resonated with me was his bout with dyslexia. And I wanted to know if you could speak on his dyslexia and also how he transformed himself and evolved despite that dyslexia.
Yeah, I'm so glad you asked me about that. Thanks. Because, Ali, almost from the time he could walk, just needed attention, loved being the center of attention. When he went to school, he didn't get the kind of attention he wanted because he had trouble reading. And nobody knew at the time that he was dyslexic, but he was really struggling in school. And as a result of that, he kind of became the class clown. And he might have really given up after a while if it hadn't been for his discovery of boxing. He had this great gift for boxing, and suddenly he found a purpose. He found a way of expressing himself. He found a way of earning the approval, even of his teachers, who didn't understand why he was having such a hard time. He's obviously an incredibly bright, incredibly brilliant speaker, but he really had a hard time reading and writing. And not only did Ali find that that he had talent in the boxing ring. He obviously had a great gift for expressing himself and for putting ideas into words. And later, as he became more religious and began to read the Quran, he taught himself to be a better reader and began writing out sermons, writing out lessons that he learned and repeating them. And many of the quotes that Ali is most famous for are things that he taught himself from reading the Quran and reading teachers of the Quran. So, not everybody's ready to be a great student when you're in third grade or fourth grade or even, college. It comes to different people at different times in their life when they're ready to learn. And Ali learned at a rate that didn't always satisfy his teachers in school. But he clearly was learning all along.
Wow, that's important. Thank you so
That's
much
very important.
for that highlight. And I wanted to thank Liam for his perspective as a leader. And I really appreciated that valuable insight as a student leader. I wanted to ask the question, or ask one of the viewers in the chat has a question about, and it states, why was boxing such a seemingly very integrated sport within a pervasively segregated society?
And that question is open for the panel.
Yes.
Let's have a discussion about that.
And I can repeat it.
Please do.
Why was boxing such a seemingly very integrated sport within a pervasively segregated society?
Well, I could talk to that a little bit. I mean, boxing was always a game for the poor. You had to be willing to risk a lot, and if you were well established and privileged, you didn't need boxing. So in the early part of the 20th century, it was a lot of immigrants, Jews and Germans and Italians and Irishmen in the game. And by the time Ali comes along, one of the things that really appeals to him about boxing is that he can fight white people. And there are white boxing trainers who want to work with him at a time when he's growing up in the Jim Crow South, when everything is segregated where he lives. Boxing is integrated. So I think boxing to Ali offers a view of what maybe the world could be like.
Well, and I'd like to just add to that. Boxing and sports in general is probably one of the arenas where individuals are judged by what they can do, not who they are. And by that, I mean, if you're boxing and you can punch and dance like Ali, you're going to be recognized, not because of your color, not because of your race, not because of any of those other things. So my experience is that was one of the reasons that I've always felt good about particular sports, because as a Black man going on to a Central Michigan University, I was the only Black man there. But they say, I want you to be able to run or tackle. Well, I can do that better than the white man. Mm-hmm. So therefore, it's the kind of open for me, say, well, I can, and if somebody can do it better than me, they're going to remove me. I remember one time, and I'm going to share this briefly to try to make this point. When I was playing with the Browns, and by the way, you mentioned Deion Sanders. I wish I could have played like Deion. I was a cornerback, and Deion was the man. Deion is the man as on the corner. But I don't go into that. But a guy called a touchdown pass over me, and everybody, and you could hear people in the stands booing. Get Beach out of there. Put somebody else in. And the coach said, if I had somebody better, they'd be in. Mm. If there was somebody better, they would be there. It wasn't based on what a lot of people think it should be based on. And sports kind of allow that opportunity for people, for you to look at people and judge them on what you ask them to do.
On their skills.
That's right. You ask me to do this, I can do this, then I can be rewarded for it. But the public or the society, when they talk about the thing about integration and a racist society, you're not chosen by what you can do. You've chosen by what color you are. Mm. Now, I mean, that's the reality of it. I don't know how real you want to get in this particular thing, but that's what's real. So if you can stand up like a Paul Robeson, or even a Dr. Martin Luther King, or even Neil, they say, look, these are the things that it's all about power and control to me. If I can control what you think, and if I control how you move, then I got the power.
Well, Walter, you bring that up, and I read something about you in the AFL in 1962, I believe, where you yourself as an athlete took a stand and paid a price for it. Can you speak on that?
Well, yeah. I'm trying to stay away from personal aspects of it because we're talking about Ali.
Understood.
We, at that time, I was with the Boston Patriots, and we had to play a football game in New Orleans. This is the American Football League. But to go to New Orleans with the Boston Patriots, the white boys could go to the hotel, but the black boys had to go somewhere else out in a motel. So therefore, we would have to get to practice 4 hours earlier because we had to travel to where we were to where everybody was playing. And so I just said, basically, I said, well, I don't really want to play under these kind of conditions. I don't want to play under segregated conditions, you know. So therefore, that was just my position. And of course, they said, well, that's what you have to stay. This is where you have to live. This is where you have to reside. And you're going to have to come in 2 hours early to do this. And it just didn't seem fair to me. And next day I had my plane ticket to go back home to Pontiac. And then when I wrote Paul Brown to go to the Browns, the Cleveland Browns, Paul said, well, we understand you had some issues. Are we going to have those issues? No, unless you do the same thing.
Yeah.
You'll send me into a housing project, a motel away from the rest of the team, then, you know, that would be the issue. But fortunately, and I'm high on this, Jim was there. And Jim was a strong, dynamic Black man. And he was the energy or the force in that environment far as I was concerned. He wasn't going to allow those kind of things to happen.
Indeed.
Yes,
We
thank you
have
so
other
much.
questions in the chat. You want to pick one out and read
I
it?
wanted to allow anyone else who wanted to tackle that question. You know, like Walter was saying, he was not void of being being called a communist, like Paul Robeson was. And even here in Arkansas, when I started talking about how there were legislators, prominent white men and leaders in the community who were putting that stamp on Ali as un-American and a communist and that type of thing, and trying to ban him from speaking here in Arkansas and going to the colleges and talking with the students.
And one
on
of
the
the
campus.
one of the biggest voices that spoke out against him was Mr. Barton, who Barton Coliseum is named after.
Yeah, if that's a whole nother, that's actually in a book that talks about all the athletes in Arkansas. So that is something that if you're interested in knowing the struggle he had here in the state, that's a resource for you to look at. One of the churches that Ali visited when he was here was Union AME Church.
One of the first two Black churches in the state of Arkansas.
And if you're familiar with if you're in Arkansas, you're familiar with the church or the area, it is right next to Community Bakery on Main Street, which is now South on Main. So it's on the other side. I forget the street, but that historical church is the first church that he spoke to the Sunday school class on or to. And I just wanted to mention that as being one of the churches that he visited and spoke. I don't think we have a question here in the chat. We have a few statements of encounters of meeting Ali and remembering him being the Grand Marshal at UAPB's homecoming parade back in the 1990s. And
I remember that. I remember that. I was there for that. I got on campus in '88.
Speak on it.
So yeah, it was. I actually got a picture.
Oh my God.
Yeah, it was amazing.
Oh,
I will never forget it. So
what did you do? Did you run up to him? Was
no, I couldn't get close. No. I couldn't get close. They had, but I was able to get him in he was in a, I don't know if it's called a drop top or what, but he was the Grand Marshal. And so, where you sit convertible or something. And so I was able to get a couple of pictures, but of course, I don't know where those are. I didn't have a cell phone in 1990. But yeah, it was pretty amazing. Pine Bluff was packed. I mean,
Yeah.
homecoming is a whole experience anyway.
Yes.
Anyway, but to have Ali, man, it was on. Pine Bluff was on.
Yeah, he was
So
at the homecoming.
awesome. So
He was at the homecoming assembly with us, and I was on the team during that time. And we gathered around him during the assembly, and iconic moment with a picture with Muhammad Ali and of course the Archie Gunslinger Cooley, coach, and those two guys in the room together, and it just a big statement, a huge statement. And Ali, again, as Mr. Beach mentioned earlier, he's always the life of the party. Although his health was deteriorating, he still made jokes. I had a teammate who's passed on now, was Vern Garrison, big guy, bald head, played offensive lineman, and fair-skinned. And Muhammad Ali told him, "You look like George Foreman. I ought to knock you out right now." So everybody just laughed. And but he kept it very loose. And one thing you noticed, and you hear stories about, when Muhammad Ali was in the parade, people walked up to him of all colors, and young lady went up to him to talk to him, and he called her back because she had a kid with him, and he greeted every person. I know Dr. Carolyn Blakely talks about how he greets everyone, and he tried to make jokes, do magic tricks. He loved people, and he could have been standoffish. Could have had his bodyguards clearing everybody out, but he wanted to be amongst the crowd. And that's one thing I did admire about him.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, I wanted to ask this question for each of you to weigh in on it
in a discussion format.
Right, in a discussion format. This is one of our last questions because we're nearing the end. How has media, specifically sports media, changed the way audiences perceive athletes? How has media, specifically sports media, change the way audiences view?
I would like to address that. I think, again, I want to refer back to what Mr. Beach said earlier. One thing from a sports standpoint, you do have some people that go out and give of themselves and go into the community and do a lot of things too, but a lot of time the media doesn't want to see that. So now with the new NIL deals for college students, everybody wants to get paid to do whatever now. To come out to eat a burger in front of somebody, you pay me to do that. To sign a jersey, pay me to come out and see my image, my name, image, and likeness. Anything I do, I want monetary value for that or some type of service exchange. So I think we've taken away in some instances for the love and the passion of the game to make it more of a business. And I think that's translated to other things in life as well. So that's one thing I see that media has done, and monetize it, if that's a word, but it's not. Yeah, a lot of people don't love it like they did some time ago.
I would like someone else to weigh in on that. Leon, would you like to weigh in on that?
Yes, I think from an outsider's perspective looking in, I don't think that the media, specifically sports media, does a good enough job of really documenting the importance of what happens in sports for the rest of us, especially during like Colin Kaepernick, during that time. Like the results and the consequences of what happened to Colin Kaepernick are a little bit more than just a quarterback not being able to play in a game, or, you know, a quarterback not being able to continue his NFL career and possibly being one of the, you know, greatest players ever. I think that the cultural statement that was made, like sports media, to me, they have a role and a function to really document that and to talk about it and, you know, comment on it for the rest of us. And I think that that's really what sports media needs to do a better job of the, you know, cultural journalists function there versus just sports. If we leave sports completely objective, then, you know, we're going to start to lose some of that meaning behind everyone coming together for a singular purpose. And then out of that, we're all like, that's an immediate bond that can be made across cultures. And so if we, for example, looking at the Olympics and looking at a lot of different international sports organizations, they're now starting to take a stance against activism and letting athletes truly be the activists that they are. But if sports journalists spoke up more in the spaces that they have, then I think that the athletes would have the support that they need to take a stand on the world stage and say, hey, what's happening in my country isn't right. And I want everyone to know, so that way everyone can play a role in making this global community better. So that, honestly, I really think that sports media should take a more active role in highlighting the cultural consequences of some of the actions that we're seeing now versus just, you know, the sport itself.
Thank you.
Media, like all other aspects of communications in a society, is a unique form of propaganda. It's to promote the ideas that they so choose to promote. Now, as an ex-athlete, I very rarely do I watch or pay attention to watch football games or things of that nature, because it's a different game from the time that I played it. So I don't look at it. But I noticed the other day I was watching a game, and when I played football during the time that I played, I don't think I ever had two football teams where both football teams scored 40 points. Mm. So the game has changed. Now, I don't have any problem with that. But what happens is that when you look at that and they talk about it, they'll talk about how well the quarterbacks were and they completed the pass to get all those points. But they never say how poorly the defense was for you to score 40 points. Mm-hmm. Now, when I played, if someone had scored 40 points on us, we were in big trouble. Mm-hmm. But now, every week, teams are scoring 30 and 40 points. But the point I'm making, consistent with what the young man just said, is that their role is to promote their product. And promoting their product has nothing to do with the objective or the truth or the reality of it. So media, all forms of media. My response and what I do for myself, I give zero reliance on what they're talking about. So it doesn't matter who's on those knees on the news sport programs. It's zero reliance. I don't play. I'll have to make the determination where I see or understand the truth based on my experiences.
Yes.
Indeed, yes, thank you. Looking at the clock, we are right about out of time with this Ali in Arkansas event. So what I want to do is I want to give each of you an opportunity to give us a reflection on this discussion and on the documentary, to tell us what you got out of Ali's legacy, Ali's 6 core principles, and Ali's evolution, all of that tied in. And let's start with Jonathan. Tell us what you, give us your closing comments and what you got out of this experience.
Before you do that, Jonathan, because I really wanted to know what you thought about the media, especially sports media.
Okay.
I really wanted to know. I want to know of everyone, but I wanted to hear from your perspective as a writer and an author on, on that particular question. So if you can answer that and
then go into mine.
Yes.
You're muted. You're muted.
Hold on just a second.
Thank you. I really enjoyed hearing from my fellow panelists their thoughts on the media. And what I wanted to say about that is that athletes since Muhammad Ali have recognized that they have a power to push the media to confront issues that the media may be reluctant to deal with. And I think when Ali came along, the press was all white. Every reporter in the pack covering him was white, and they did not know how to write about Black issues. They did not understand civil rights. That was all they knew about was punches and victories and losses. And Ali forced them to put his words in the press. And Dick Gregory, who I interviewed for this book, said to me that Ali had a kind of power that Martin Luther King and Malcolm X didn't have, because he could gain access to the media unedited. He could speak and be heard instantly. And I think today, Colin Kaepernick and LeBron James and the other athletes understand that they have a power to move the media, whether the media wants to be moved or not. And that power is something they inherited from Muhammad Ali.
Indeed. Thank you for that. And can you give us your closing comments?
Well, those were my closing comments. And I just want to say that, we all, not just the athletes, but we all have a responsibility to use whatever access we have to be heard, whatever we can best do to be heard. For me, it's writing books. We all have a responsibility to speak out for what we believe in and not let that default, not let that assumption go that we can't control the media, that we can't be heard. We have to fight to be heard. And I think that's Ali's legacy.
Absolutely. Thank you. Walter Beach, the third. Dear sir, what are your thoughts?
I have to agree with Jonathan. Is that my father always asked me, he'd always say to me, "Hey man, show me your face." I said, "What do you mean? I'm a kid." "What do you mean show me? Let me know who you are. Let me know you, let people know who you are. Because you have an authentic voice. You're part of this human registry. So you have the right to express and articulate who you are." And I think consistent with what Jonathan is saying is that we look for other people to tell us who we are. And my position is the only thing most people know is what other people tell them. So my father said, you tell them what your story is. Don't wait for them to tell. And that's what Ali was doing. And as he manifests the reality of who he was saying, I'm the greatest, and I'm gonna voice it, and I'm gonna manifest it in all aspects of my human expression. And for me, that always resonated with, I say, my hypocrisy manifests itself in silent rage and opulence. That's just me, So when you say so I have silent rage and opulence.
Yes, sir.
That's why I have on this nice African shirt.
It's beautiful. I was gonna compliment you on how clean you look tonight. Yes. And that's so powerful what you stated about how not only our parents, but just asking you about stand up and show me your face. Who are you?
Yes.
In this world, and what is it that you want people to remember about your legacy and what you bring? Because you do bring value to the world, and so I really appreciate
distinguish yourself.
Right, hearing that. It was something else you said that was powerful, and I wanted to touch on it, but it's gone. But I wanted to drop down to Christopher, Coach Robinson. Give us your thoughts and your final thoughts and encouragement.
First of all, I wanted to thank you again for this opportunity to serve on this panel. It has been an enlightening one, you know, in preparing for this and thinking about this and thinking about what Muhammad Ali did and what he stood for. It's very evident some of the things he fought for in his day. The fight is still here today, and there are different modes of opportunity to address those concerns, those issues, those things that stand in our way. However, I think from a communication standpoint, from things like this, we can bring it more to the forefront and address it together. One thing I did admire about Muhammad Ali was that he was, as Kamara said earlier in the session, that he was going to be upfront and straightforward with you and then let you know exactly where he stood. And whether you liked it or not, this is where he stood with you, and what's right is right and what's wrong is wrong in his eyes. And I do think a lot of times we still cover things up, but it taught me some things. It made me think about things even more, that we all have a role. We all have a part. And I want to do my part and help others to do theirs as well. And I think this panel and this session open that back up again, because a lot of times we do go back in our day-to-day mundane activities, but it's bigger than just what we do on a day-to-day scale. And there are a lot of people out there that may need that little thing that we think is small to us. They may need that. And so it's given me the mindset of, again, let's go get it. Let's go make it happen. There's still work to be done.
Thank you so much, Coach Robinson, and for all the work that you're doing on the campus.
And now we go to SGA President
Leon.
But ready to rumble.
Yes. So every voice on this panel is valuable and has been valuable. I tend to, especially with our younger generation and our generation now, to really want to, because I always say I trust you with the future. I absolutely do. I trust you with our future, and it's important to me to know how you feel and think, always. And so we wanted to save you for the last to speak on it, because not only is your voice lasting, it's you are our present, and you are hope for what's going to happen in the future. So we want to hear from you, your thoughts, what resonated with you, and what we could do.
Yeah, first of all, thank you so much for the opportunity to be a part of this panel and be a part of today. The preparation leading up to it for me was amazing. I know SGA, we were doing a little bit on Twitter.
Okay. You're back.
Okay, you're back.
Right. You know, saving the planet and everything, the lights.
Yes.
But thank you all for letting me be a part of this panel. The research leading up to it about Ali was really enlightening for me. One thing that the documentary kind of hit on and that I've been reading about were Ali's core principles. To me, that's really what made his leadership different and unique, is that he had clear guiding principles that guided him on every single decision that he made. And one thing that I'm noticing right now in the age of hashtag activism, where there's not necessarily a leader of the movement, but an idea and a cause, is that we don't necessarily have principles that are guiding our decisions. And one thing that I really would like my generation, and I'm going to claim Gen Z, those are my people, is if we have principles that will guide us into the future. And that if we have principles that whenever an opportunity comes our way, or whenever we're strategizing about how to create the change that we want to see, those principles are going to set up how we act. Because if not, and we kind of see it right now, you'll waver with whatever comes your way. And I think what makes Ali stand firm in what he believes is that here's a list, and if it doesn't fit in one of these categories, is not for me.
Mhm.
It may be for you, but it's not for me.
Mhm.
And so moving into the future, one thing I really and truly hope my generation takes from Ali is have principles, stick to those principles. And if your strategy or if an idea or some new philosophy is coming along and it doesn't fit into any of those categories, it's okay to say no. And it's okay to say, hey, we're not going to do this, not because it's necessarily a bad idea, but because what we're trying to accomplish, it doesn't help us get to our goals any faster. And it might actually hinder us from getting to where we want to go. So that's really what's important to me, is having those principles, abiding by those principles, and not being afraid to say no when something defies those principles that you set for yourself.
Yeah.
Thank
May I say something to that young man?
Yes.
Why he moved me, and the point that he made.
Mhm.
There's a thing that Malana Karinga wrote, the Hosea. And in the Hosea, it says this, and this is for you, Leon. I do not speak falsely, for I am great. I do not act lightly, for I have weight. I am not untrue, for I am the balance. And I do not swerve, for I am the standard. And that's what Ali is. And that's what you're talking about. We have to be the standard.
That's right.
And you can't be the standard, like you say, unless you develop some policies and directions of where you're going. You just can't be out there. I'm old school, I'm 89 years old. Tell me what you want to do, boogie, bop, or boogaloo. No, it can't be like that. Okay, I'm sorry. I'm getting out of town now, so I'm good.
No, this is powerful and it's so needed, and I appreciate that, because really there is not anything else to say after that. I mean, you gave that beautiful poem and like Leon said, just kind of setting some guidelines for yourself and taking those core principles, and these core principles can be found on the Ali Center, on his website, and there's so much information there. Casey, we're gonna toss it back to Casey so she can give you that information, if that's okay, Casey, for the listeners to get more information about it. We want to thank you all on the panel for engaging with us and letting us engage with you. What you have to say is so valuable and so needed, and we truly appreciate your time and energy and efforts. Thank you so much. And we just appreciate you and Arkansas PBS for being able to put this all together so that we can have this very important and wonderful dialogue. Thank you. And we're going to
turn it over to you.
And I want to say the same thing. I want to thank everybody for their insights into Ollie's life and legacy and how he's inspired you. Yes, the Ollie Center, we dropped that information in the chat. So the folks in OV, you should be able to see that in the chat, or even if you just Google the Ollie Center, there's amazing information there. There's a really cool program called the Red Bike Moment, which was Ollie's red bike moment. That's what got him into boxing. And you need to go there and read the story, because it's a great story. But from Arkansas PBS's hearts, thank you to Walter Beach, Jonathan Hyde, Kamara Seals, Leon Jones, Christopher Robinson. Gloves Not Guns, we were so happy to have them. They dropped off, but they were with us, our young boxing group. Very special thanks to our partners, University of Arkansas Pine Bluff, the Chancellor Dr. Alexander, who joined us, for the beginning, and Clarice and Kwame, our wonderful partners with the Arkansas Peace and Justice Memorial Movement. And I've got a few housekeeping things, so stay with me. It's only going to take me 30 seconds. Okay. I did want to give a shout out. We had our CEO, Courtney Pledger, and our COO, Ed Leon, with us tonight, and also our great team from the marketing department. We had Julie Thomas, and we had Veronica Palmer, and we had Stephen Hefner, and we had our brand spanking new intern, Aaron Easterling, who was our own little Joan Cusack, if y'all ever remember broadcast news, running with the tape at the last minute. That was day 2 for Aaron today. And there's a survey. There's a survey at the end that would mean a great deal to us if you would stick around and do the survey. And you will get an email from us about our gift pack. And don't forget, the broadcast starts tomorrow night, January 28th, 8 p.m. And it will go each Friday. Each section will be on a Friday through February 18th. You can also stream it. So enjoy the entire Muhammad Ali documentary. Thank you all for being with us tonight,
Yes.
and take care.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye. Good night.